Welcome. Hello? Are you there? Good. Welcome. The Center for African American Studies would like to thank you and those online who are viewing this event via webcast for joining us for what we believe will be an extraordinary evening. I want to thank our wonderful faculty, I know they're here, and staff for giving the Center for African American Studies at Princeton the life and vitality that has set it apart in this wonderful country, I guess. I want to thank Noliwe Rooks, our Associate Director, Carla Haley Penn, our manager. Could you raise your hands? I think Carla is somewhere about. April Peters, our undergraduate administrator, Kai Laidlaw, our IT person, and Jennifer Losi, who's our events coordinator, whose hard work has made this moment possible. Can we give the staff of the center? It is my task and my pleasure to introduce Van Jones. It's rare that one has the opportunity, even in places like Princeton, to meet someone whose work is fundamentally transforming how we conceive of the human enterprise, how we think about our relation to others and our relation to our planet. Van Jones is a globally recognized, award-winning pioneer in human rights and the clean energy economy. He co-founded 3 powerful and influential nonprofit organizations, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Color of Change, and Green for All. He has authored the definitive book on green jobs, the best-selling The Green Collar Economy. He served as the Green Jobs Advisor in the Obama White House in 2009. We won't say much about that experience. We do know, and I'm thinking about James Baldwin, that to act, Brother Van, is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger. And we know what that experience means, right? I should say that Brother Van loves Michael Jackson. You have to see the poster that he travels with everywhere he goes. It's beautiful. So when you go by his office to visit him, you'll see this wonderfully, I forget which album it's from. Right After Thriller. Right After Thriller, there you go. So Van is currently a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Additionally, he is a senior policy advisor at Green for All, and we are delighted that he has joined us as our distinguished fellow in the center. Man, John Dewey wrote, my favorite philosopher, he wrote in his Ethics, quote, "Hope and aspiration, belief in the supremacy of the good in spite of all evil, belief in the realizability of good in spite of all obstacles, are necessary aspirations in the life of virtue. The good can never be demonstrated to the senses, nor be proved by calculations of personal profit. It involves a radical venture of the will in the interest of what is unseen." What better way to describe Van Jones? Someone constantly engaged in a radical venture of the will, in the interest of the least of these, in the interest of a future yet realized. Please welcome Van Jones, who will talk with us today about Beyond Green Jobs, the Next American Economy and the Politics of Hope.
Goodness. Hello. How are you? I am honored to be here. Can you hear me easily? Good. Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here. I want to thank Professor Glaude for giving me that warm introduction. He is only a few days older than I am, but an awful lot more accomplished as a scholar, so it's an honor to get a chance to work with him. I also want to honor and acknowledge Noliwe Rooks, who is essentially my god sister. Her mother, Belvie Rooks, is sort of the Ella Baker of the Bay Area right now. Ella Baker being the incredible godmother for the Freedom Riders. And so we have a whole new generation of leaders coming up in the Bay Area who care about justice and soulfulness and love and dignity. And her mother is the den mother of all of us. And so she is my sister, and I honor her. I have to give an acknowledgement to my hero, Professor Cornel West, who we should give a round of applause to. It's an honor for me to have him here. And somewhat intimidating. However, I will push through my nerves because I'm really here to talk to the rising generation, to those of you who are young people in this moment, because you are facing a tremendous set of challenges. And in fact, I would go so far as to argue that you are in danger of inheriting a nightmare scenario in your country. A nightmare scenario in your country. And I hope that some of my ideas and offerings can begin to help you navigate some of the challenges that I see for you. But the nightmare scenario can simply be described as this. You are in danger of finding yourself living in a country that is getting more and more racially diverse, more and more ethnically diverse, but less and less economically prosperous. More racially and ethnically diverse, but less economically prosperous. If you know anything about history, that is not a recipe for a common ground. That is a recipe, if anything, for a battleground. And so you have to make some decisions as a generation about how you are going to face this challenge. And I would argue that there are forces now afoot in American politics that have an answer for you. And I would argue that those answers are wrong-headed. There are forces afoot in American politics that would tell you that the problem is the problem of diversity, that it is diversity that's a problem, that having more kinds of people in the country is a problem. And you see them beginning to launch attacks against people based on where they were born, even being willing to change the Constitution so that where their parents were born would deny them citizenship. Diversity is a problem. You see these forces attacking people based on how they pray, acting as if someone uses the word Allah instead of God, they should be the enemy and should not be allowed to be given the same rights to build and to be a part of society as me or you. Diversity is a problem. You see them pointing out in very, very frightening ways that maybe what's wrong with the country is that we have a president whose dad is from Kenya. These kinds of remarks that have been pushed out of polite society, now coming back in. I've heard of you have resistance, what do you call it, resistance that builds up in these different strains of bacteria, and they call them superbugs. You've heard about these bed bugs. Y'all don't read Time magazine? If you don't want to ever go to another hotel, don't read Time magazine this week. They're talking about these bed bugs. And they said that they almost wiped the bed bugs out. And then they didn't get the last ones, and they come back and they're resistant to everything. Well, we now have some shame-resistant politicians and some shame-resistant politics that we thought we had wiped out. But now they're back and more virulent than ever. I would argue that your problem is not the diversity. I would go so far as to say that the diversity is not the problem. In the end of the day, the diversity will be the solution. I would go so far as to say that it's going to be the fact that we have the genius of all peoples here in one country. We have the genius of people of every color, every ethnic background, people of all faiths who have come to this one country. And the United States of America, as it operates today, it's a miracle every day. That's something we don't understand. We take it for granted. We take it for granted that we can sit here with every color in the rainbow, and there's no problem with that. I just got off the road from Africa. I was in Asia. There are some countries where you have two ethnic groups, and all they do is fight. They just have two. I did my work in the Bay Area. We had 33 different languages being spoken in the public schools. 33. You couldn't just talk about Asians. You had to talk about Samoans, Laotians, Vietnamese, Filipinos, and know the difference. And don't get them confused. Do I look like a Samoan? It's like, well, funny you should ask. Do you? You know, but we get along. It's a miracle every day. And I would argue that to the extent that not only America's problems are going to be solved, but the world's problems are going to be solved, it's going to be because this country has been able to figure out how to have that miracle happen every day, day in, day out. So we have new ideas, that we have more entrepreneurial drive, we have people willing to work harder here in our country. The people who want to tell you that diversity is a problem would actually chop off from your generation, from your country, the only real resource that we have to compete in a global world and to outcompete and to outcontribute other countries in the global world. I would argue that the problem is not how do we shrink the diversity. The challenge is how do we grow the economy. That's the problem. How do we secure prosperity going forward? What will the next American economy look like? Because my argument is simply this: if we can put America back to work, we can pull America back together. If we can put America back to work, we can pull America back together. But if we cannot put America back to work, nothing will be able to pull America back together. So the question is about the economy. Now, before I start talking about the economy, I need to attend to some listening in the room that you may have brought in with you from watching television about what I think about the economy. Because I'm going to be a part of your community for the next year or so, I feel I should take this moment to introduce myself to you so you know who I am. I was born in a militant Black Panther family. Okay, I'm just joking. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, you gotta laugh sometimes to keep from crying, Dr. West. Actually, my dad was a cop in the military. I grew up on the edge of a small town in the rural South. I went to all public schools. Both my parents ultimately were school teachers. My father was born in abject poverty in Memphis, Tennessee. Anybody ever here been to Memphis or know anything about Memphis at all? My dad was born in Orange Mound. All right. My dad was born in Orange Mound. And when he was 5 years old, his father, who was a plumber, died. The last thing that my grandfather said to my father was, "I'm not going to be here anymore. And you're going to have to be the man of this household. I want you to take care of your little brother and your little sister." And then he died. Now, I grew up going to Memphis, Tennessee with my father later in life, and every single person who saw my father would see my father and say, "Hey, old Willie, how you doing, old Willie?" Now, I thought to myself, being a small person, this makes sense. My father's name is Willie, and he's old, right? So the fact that they call my father Old Willie was not anything that shocked me. Until later on in life, I realized they started calling him that when he was 6. Because he used to walk around and try to walk like his daddy walked. And he put his thumbs in his pants belt like his father. And they used to call him Old Willie, trying to be like his father. My father joined the military, joined the Air Force, and he used that opportunity to put himself through college. Not an unusual story, but he also then put his little brother through college. And then he helped a cousin through college. Then he put me through college and my sister through college, you see. Because that's what he was told to do by his father. Now, my dad died 2 years ago, but he set an example for me. We grew up in a house that was a serious house. My father took the opportunity in this country very seriously. He was as red, white, and blue as anybody walking around. And to give you a sense of what kind of household I grew up in, many of you are too young to know this, so you're going to think I'm lying. But y'all older folks like myself know. This is a history lesson for your young people. I can do history too, you know, not just... I know y'all want me to do policy. I'm going to do some history for you. Do you know that there was a time when TV used to go off? No, off. I don't mean you cut the TV off, which you never do. I mean, the station used to go off. And it would just be like, ooh. Look at these young people. They look at these. I knew this guy was nuts. Saw it on TV. No, off. There used to be a time when TV would just go, it would ooh, and they would have these color bars, right? And it was just no more TV until like 6 a.m. for the cartoons. You were just through. No TV, no internet, over. He's like, was that slavery? What was that? Terrible times. Oh. I mean, you hear people even now, they talk about, you know, the 24-hour, you know, cable station. You think to yourself, well, of course it's 24 hours. It's only, you know, you can't have 25 hours. No, what they mean is that it used to be just 12 hours, and now it's 24 hours. Things have changed. Now, for us older people, what did they used to play right before they went to the color bars? What? The national anthem. Every single day in America. You don't believe this. You think to yourself, that would mess up the videos. No, every single day, every home, every station, all across America, it would go off, and before it went off, they would play the national anthem. And they would show the jets flying over the horizon and the eagle flying over the Grand Canyon or wherever eagles fly. Don't y'all biology people tell me I'm wrong. I remember it was some eagles in the Grand Canyon. You remember this. Yeah. When I got old enough to stay up that late, my father would stand at attention. And I would stand right beside him. Okay. That's the kind of household I grew up in. And my father had a view about poverty and about opportunity. And he said, nobody can give you anything that'll stop you from being poor. Nobody. If they give you $1 million, if you're poor in your mind, you'll spend it tomorrow and you'll be broke again. He said, nobody can give you anything to stop you from being poor. He knew because he had come out of poverty himself. He said, you got to climb the ladder of poverty yourself. So once you get out, nobody can take it from you. He says, but society has a responsibility to make sure that there's a ladder for you to climb. And that's why when he left the military, he became a public junior high school principal. And I'm going to just go and tell my story. So the NAACP, now y'all think I was born in, you know, the turn of the century because I'm talking about, you know, TV being turned off early. But I was born in 1968. That was the year that Dr. King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was killed. And inside of my lifetime, the NAACP had to sue the county I grew up in so that my father could be a principal in the junior high school. Hear me? In my lifetime, they had to sue. So the NAACP won. They said, okay, we're going to give Willie Jones a junior high school. We're going to give him no worse junior high school in the county, though. We're going to give him Jackson Junior High School. And when I was a kid, I wouldn't go to Jackson Junior High. I wouldn't go by Jackson Junior High School. It was a rough, tough school. And my dad went in there, and he turned it around. And because he was fearless, he'd tell these kids, look, you don't scare me. I know your mother. And they, and that was it, So, and he used to walk the halls of this poor, unfortunate junior high school wearing dark green sunglasses and a dog whip, carrying a dog whip. And he had this deep voice, and he would be like, boy! And the whole hallway would just freeze, Fuller, you get your behind in that, in the class, it was just teleportation was invented, you know, at Jackson Junior High School. He was also a master psychologist too, because he would tell these kids, you get on the intercom and say, you know, Friday we're going to have a dance and, you know, activity, and the kids would be like, oh, are you serious? Wow, we never had dances around here. And then Tuesday he'd get on the intercom and say, I heard there was a fight after school over there on Highland and 3rd, dance canceled. And the kids would be stunned. And they would go, Mr. Jones, why can't we have our dance? He goes, well, you know, y'all gonna be fighting after school, you can't have them. Who was involved in the fight? I can't tell you. Well, no dance. Okay, it was Billy. And he literally turned that school around by giving them something that they wanted, not just by punishing them, but also being able to give them something they wanted. They had to work as a whole school to get. He got the local Procter & Gamble to be a partner with him in education. They got computers in that school before they got them in any other school. My dad was an amazing force for good, and he got statewide awards. And I remember telling my father when that movie, what was that movie? Lean on Me? Stand By Me? No, Lean on Me. Lean on Me? Who's seen that movie, Lean on Me? I said, y'all better get on iTunes. It's about, you know, this kind of tough principal who comes and turns this whole school around. I said, Daddy, you just like that guy, Morgan Freeman, in the Lean on Me movie. Daddy, you just like him. Daddy said, I would never tell no kid to lean on me. Better learn to lean on yourself. So that's my father. I want you to know that I grew up with him, and that sense of responsibility, and taking very seriously the opportunities that were put in front of us. And also, we'll never forget the time you told me, because it's important, you're going to understand how nerdy and naive I was when I left home. One time my father said to me, Anthony, that's my real name, Anthony, if I ever find out that you've been doing drugs, I'm going to kill you. Now, give me the ketchup, and I went to get the ketchup for my dad, and I think to myself, this man will probably actually kill me, and I would be for real dead. So I've never, I'm 42 this month, I've never to my life touched any kind of drugs at all. And as a result, I wound up being a good little nerd, did well in school, got accepted to go to Yale for law school. And when on my way to Yale, my father told me, pulled me off to the side away from the rest of the family, and he said, you know, son, you passed me up. Passed me up. You're going to go someplace I would have never dreamed about going. And you're going to learn a lot of stuff I don't know. You're going to be smarter than me. And I'm proud of you. But I want you to know there are two kinds of smart people in this world. There are smart people who can take something very simple and make it sound very complicated to enrich themselves. And there are smart people who can take something very complicated and make it sound very simple to empower other people. And I just ask that you be that kind of smart guy. That's all I ask from you. And so I took that as my charge, to be the kind of smart person that could take very complicated stuff, make it sound simple to empower other people, and I went off to Yale. And when I got there, again, having been raised by Willie Jones, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with a lot of stuff that other young people had experience with. So I very quickly wound up calling my grandmother. I didn't call my father because I thought he might come up there and burn the place down. But I did call my grandmother. And I said, Grandmama! Okay, I didn't. Big Mama! Big Mama! They up here. The students. She said, what is it, baby? What is it? The students is up here, Big Mama. She said, what is it, baby? It's going to be all right. It's all right. What happened? They're up here smoking marijuana cigarettes. They're smoking marijuana cigarettes. She said, oh, baby, it's going to be all right. Just pray. I said, I've been praying. They still smoking the marijuana cigarettes. She said, well, baby, just tell your professors it's going to be, they smoking them too. They smoking them too. Oh, God. I'm thinking to myself, don't you know Jesus sees you? So I said, I got to get off this crazy campus and go out in the community and do some volunteer work. So I got in the community, and guess what? Kids are smoking marijuana cigarettes over there, too. Now, how many people have you been to Yale? I know Yale's a dirty word around here, but how many of you been to that other school? Now see, because y'all think I'm lying and exaggerating. How far from the campus do you have to go before you get to the ghetto? 10 yards, huh? You got long legs. It seemed like 10 yards. That's about 2 blocks, right? About 3 blocks. You can stand on the corner and see Yale and the housing projects right? And so for me, as this kid who grew up in the rural South, Christian upbringing, military cop as a father, I was stunned by the fact you had 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids doing drugs. Some at Yale, some in the housing projects. But what stunned me and what changed my life was when I realized what happened to the kids. When the Yale students got in trouble with the drugs, the system responded very aggressively by putting them in rehab. When the housing project kids, literally same age group, literally within blocks of each other, got in trouble, the system responded very aggressively, putting them where? In jail. Now, as somebody who was raised the way I was raised, this was, to you guys, maybe no big deal. This shattered my world. I could not believe it. And I remember going to talk to the dean of my law school and saying, I'm here, I'm learning all this stuff about equal protection and about the Constitution and about all these things, and literally, I can walk out the door and I can see injustice. Injustice. And my dean told me, well, you know, Mr. Jones, what you have to understand is those kids in the housing projects, they are drug pushers. Our kids are experimenting with drugs. The kids in the housing project, they're drug pushers. Our kids are experimenting with drugs. I said, I can't find any experimentation exception in these law books you have me reading, sir. And so I got angry and made up my mind that I had been lied to and I had been tricked. And that everything my dad taught me growing up and the things that I had been the super patriotic kid about were wrong. And Dr. King says there can be no great heartbreak where there's no great love. And I think that's true for almost every American dissident. The love was bigger than the sun, and then the heartbreak came. And like a lot of American dissidents, I spent about 10 years on the left side of Pluto. Just rebelling against what I found to be a hypocritical system that knew what it was doing. I said, I know you know what to do with children when they get in trouble with drugs. I see you do it all the time over here. But you won't do it for these children, and it's wrong. And so when I got out of law school, I became a big crusader against the mass incarceration of young black and brown kids. And I banged my head against I guess I would say the put my face up against the furnace of trying to change something in American society. And long story short, I burned out. And it was in trying to heal myself that I discovered right there in Northern California, where I went to do my work, that there were other things going on than just the negative things. And one of the things that was going on was in Northern California, something called the green economy was starting to grow. And because I would burn myself out, working late hours, going to funeral after funeral, standing outside in prisons in the rain, with grandmothers holding their hands as they're going to go into the prison gates, not to see their grandchildren, not to touch them, but just to put their hand on the glass, the plexiglass, to be able just to look through and see the child. And you do that for a few years, and it does something to you. So I was busted up inside. I was hurt, I was angry, I was lost, I was estranged from my family. And so I discovered that there's a place called Marin County. Anybody here from California? All right. Those of you from California know what I mean when I say Marin County. Marin County is just across the horizon from Oakland, where we can't see it. I mean, it's just over the horizon from Oakland, California, where I was doing my work. And it is a beautiful place. Everybody in Marin County is happy. You know how you know? Because when you walk up to them, or they walk up to you, they say, "Hi, how you doing? Happy to meet you," you know? That's not how they do in Oakland, so I was a little taken aback with these kind of things. But there was this spirituality retreat center over there, and I wanted to be able to go and heal. But doing your work in Oakland, you can't just go and say to your folk in Oakland, "I'm going to the spirituality retreat." It doesn't really go down. So I would say, "I'm going to the Raiders game. I'll see you in 3 days," you know. But they had amazing stuff in Marin County, stuff that we didn't have in Oakland, like salads. Salads, you know, and tofu, and hybrid cars, and solar panels, and yoga. And I started getting involved with it because I was, you know, and I started getting happy. How are you? I'm fine. I'm actually, funny you should ask, you know. And I started to revive. And so I'm driving back and forth from Oakland, where we have cancer clusters and asthma and no jobs and every problem in the world times 12, to Marin County, where you have organic food and all this clean energy technology and new companies getting started up and yoga and all sort of stuff. And in one of these trips going back and forth, I asked myself the question, this is great. I'm doing better. I feel better than I ever have. I'm healthy. Why do I have to drive out of Oakland to get this? Why can't every community have this? Why can't these kids who I'm constantly having to fight to keep, out of trouble, out of prison, with the youth program I'm running and the advocacy program I'm running, why can't these kids have that? Why can't these kids have green jobs, not jails? And it just hit me like a thunderclap, 4 syllables, green jobs, not jails, for these young people. And I found my mission. Because what I realized was that the people in Oakland had some hustle and some drive and some soul and some dreams and a need for work, and that these people in Marin County, just across the bridge, were coming up with ideas that were exciting, but at the same time, there was something missing. And I began working to try to pull these communities together so that we could connect the work that most needs to be done. I believe, giving us clean energy and healthier food, that's the most important work that needs to be done, with the people who most need work. I said, my word, we could connect the people who most need work with the work that most needs to be done and fight pollution and poverty at the same time and have a better country. And that became my mission. And so I began to go all over the country trying to argue that this would be a good way to go. And eventually we got the Oakland City Council to create the Oakland Green Jobs Corps. We got Speaker Pelosi to work with George W. Bush, to pass the Green Jobs Act of 2007, which was something I had proposed. On a bipartisan basis, we got it done. President reached out to me, and I began to feel in my heart that my dad was right all along. That maybe Bill Clinton said it best. That Bill Clinton said there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed by what's right with America, you see. And that I had seen a lot of what was wrong with America, but I could also finally been able to see what was right with America. I could see how one could be used to solve the other, and I went on a mission. And I've talked just like I talk now. I tell you anything about my history, my past, and toward trying to get people to come together. And I want you to understand that background, so when I start talking to you about what I think we can do together, I'm not somebody who's doesn't know what it means to build bridges. And I've been blessed to be literally from the jailhouse to the White House and back again. I know that we are one people in America, and we have the opportunity to do something historic. But in order to do something historic, your generation, back to you now, has to take this very seriously. Now, I honestly believe that if I went through that whole journey and came out the other side and said, look, I have every right as an African American to be mad at you forever, and I'm going to give that right up. Right? And you have every right to be ignorant of the problems in the country. But I ask you to give that right up. And now, you informed and me not outraged, but us just trying to sort out what we can do together, I believe we can solve the problems. And I actually believe that if I did that, if I stopped declaring my little war on the system would stop declaring this little war on me. Turned out that wasn't exactly correct. But that's my problem. I'm going to talk to you about your problem. If I'm right, just pretend I'm right, and you have to figure out a way to put America back to work, or you won't be able to pull America back together, how do you do it? I got 20 minutes to tell you, and trust me, I can do it. And I'm going to take the time to let you know who I am, because people are going to tell you who I am. I want you to say, no, you actually met the guy, and he's even crazier than you thought, but for different reasons. The next American economy, sisters and brothers, the one that can actually solve your problem, will be different than the last American economy in 3 ways. The last American economy was characterized by 3 things: consumption, credit, and ecological destruction. That's the last American economy. Consumption, credit, and ecological destruction. The next American economy will be the reverse. It will be characterized by production, thrift and conservation, and ecological restoration. Your challenge is to get this economy from the old basis to the new. If you're in business school, that's going to be your challenge. If you're in political science, it's going to be your challenge. If you're doing art and culture, that's going to be your challenge. To move us from this hyper-consumptive, casino-based, ecologically reckless economy to one that is productive, that is thrifty, and that respects the earth. Now, you get the consumption piece, I imagine, you get the credit piece. I do want to focus on this, why I say this is an ecologically destructive economy, briefly. Because most of you think, well, I know it's ecologically destructive. That's why I recycle. I know you. You're Americans, you know. Like, I know it's ecologically destructive. That's why I have my Nalgene bottle. No plastic water bottles for me, right? I'm talking about something a little deeper than that. Ecologically destructive. What do birds do for the winter? They migrate, right? Birds, what? They fly south for the winter, right? You grew up with that, right? You seen any birds flying south? Used to sound like thunder. You know that? When folks first came here 200 years ago? It used to sound like thunder. It used to blot out the sun. It used to be the case that a squirrel could climb a tree at the Atlantic Ocean and go branch to branch to branch to the Mississippi River. Okay? That's what kind of continent this was. Right? You have to understand how much ecological damage we've already done. You have to understand how many species we've already driven to extinction. This is the 7th great extinction. Not being driven by a meteor coming from outer space, but by the impact of you and me driving that level of extinction. I challenge you this winter to tell me that you can see more birds in the sky going that way than you saw in any other month of the year. We wiped out that much of the home that we live on. I want you to understand that this summer that we just lived through will go down as crazy climate summer. We act like it was normal. We had almost a third of Pakistan underwater. Crazy weather, crazy ecological disruption. A third of Pakistan underwater. You blink like nothing happened. Imagine a third of this campus underwater. Now imagine a third of a nation underwater. Okay? We had 1/8 of Russia on fire. 1/8 of Russia burning because the temperatures were usually about 80 degrees were 112. I challenge you. Again, you got to take this stuff seriously, folks. Your generation. I challenge you to think about this. How many people saw Al Gore's movie in 2005? The Inconvenient Truth? Right. Remember that movie? Remember it was all scary? You remember? You came out looking like this? You remember? I could wheel in 2 TV sets right now, and I could play Al Gore's movie on this set and the Weather Channel today on that set, and you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference. The stuff Al Gore was talking about in his movie 5 years ago is now the Weather Channel today. So you've got a tremendous challenge in terms of the ecological peril that you're facing. So when I talk about green economics, I'm not talking about something optional. I'm saying we got to do more with less because we got more people. That's efficiency. And we have to use technologies that give us more gain and less pain. That's all the green economic revolution is. You want to do more with less. That's efficiency. And you want to use technologies that give you less pain and more gain. So you want to use less poison if you can, less carbon-based fuels if you can, etc. Now, you guys say to yourself, this stuff is boring. This is boring. Now, then can't be this controversial. He's basically telling me, as best my notes can tell, he has a nice father, and he wants us to be more productive, nicer to trees, and thrifty. This is boring. Why is this such a controversial proposal? It's because I'm challenging something. I'm challenging something. I'm challenging the idea that markets by themselves can fix this stuff. That's all. See, in the last century, the big fight was, were we going to have capitalism or were we going to have something else? We're going to have capitalism or we're going to have planned economies. In the last century, that question was answered definitively. We're not going to have planned societies. We're not going to, nobody's moving to North Korea. Right? I don't care, the most liberal person on your campus is not trying to go to North Korea. We're not doing that. Okay? So that question was answered. You have a tougher question. You think, well, glad that's taken care of. No, you have a tougher question. The tougher question is, we're going to have markets. We're going to have a market-based society. Your question is, what kind of capitalism? Ooh, that's tougher. What kind of capitalism? What's the mix? And that requires real serious thought. And that's not, unfortunately, what we're getting, but it requires real serious thought. But the reason why you can't duck the question is because we just went through a round of market triumphalism that hurt your country. People were so enthusiastic to be done with the debate about whether capitalism that we didn't ask the question, what kind? And look at what you got in the past 10 to 15 years. You got a stripping away of the ability of America's government to protect the American people. And so when Katrina happened, you had people, grandmamas standing on rooftops, waiting for 6 or 7 days for a drop of water in the richest country in the world. Look at what happened. When we went too far. We stripped away the protection that your great-grandmother built around Wall Street. The last time the economy crashed, your great-grandparents had enough sense to build some protections around Wall Street so that they could play their role, but they couldn't gamble with the future of the country. Over time, we stripped those protections away, and then here we are again. Look at what happened. We said we're so enthusiastic about markets that then we stripped away the power of America's government to even protect us from foreign oil companies or multinational oil companies that come over here and that have bought up essentially the bureaucracy and are now sliming up your coastlines with oil slicks. Okay? So your challenge is to say, okay, we know that if we try and do a fully planned thing, that's not going to work, but you got to have enough sense to know we need a three-legged stool and not a one-legged stool. Who in here's got kids? You might got any children? Just a simple test of common sense. If you had a child and you had to get that child across a chasm on a narrow little bridge, and that narrow bridge has no rails on it, and you can't go with your child, so you want to get your child from here to there, across that peril. Would you put that child on a tricycle or a unicycle? A tricycle or a unicycle? Most people with any sense at all would say a tricycle. Why? Because it's more stable. It's a little bit safer. The problem with extremists and fundamentalists is they always want to put your children on a unicycle. It's going to be government all the way and nothing but government. It's going to be markets all the way and nothing but markets. They want to put your child on a unicycle. I'm saying let's put your child on a tricycle. We need strong markets. We need entrepreneurship and innovation. We actually cannot get out of the problems we've got without unleashing a tidal wave of innovation. We've got to repower a nation. We've got to retrofit a nation. Governments don't do that. Entrepreneurs do that. New technologies do that. We got to have powerful market forces. But we also have to have smart government to give some checks on the downside of markets, where you tend to sometimes hurt consumers too much, or hurt the environment too much, or gamble too much, and put the country through a bubble and bust and bailout cycle. You got to have smart government, and you got to have strong communities and family. That third wheel. You got to have strong communities and families. Now, your families can look however you want to. You know, it can be Jack and Jill, Jack and Jack, Jill and Jill, Jill and Jamuna, Jack and Jared, doesn't matter. But your families, but you got to have strong communities and families. You got to have three wheels under a society if you want to keep it moving forward in a stable basis. And so what you're going to hear is when people like myself come forward and say, let's solve problems creatively. Let's use markets, let's use smart government, let's use community. There's going to be some people who scream and yell that that person is somehow doesn't understand what happened in the last century. That's not true. I believe in equitable eco-capitalism. That's what I believe. Equitable eco-capitalism. Why can that work in America? I'm going to tell you why. We have a Saudi Arabia in this country of clean energy. Right now, you use the last century's dirty, pollution-based technology called oil and coal, much of which we import from other countries. Now, you think oil is cool. You use it for your cars or whatever. Let me tell you something. Oil and coal, to run your country based on oil and coal is to run your country based on death. Let me say that again. To run a society based on oil and coal is to run a society based on death. What is oil? What is coal? Why do they call it fossil fuel? Do they call it fossil fuel because it's alive? Or do they call it fossil fuel because it's dead, right? That is the remains of living creatures that died a long time ago. In some ways, our ecological, biological ancestors. You can see oil as the blood, the dead blood of our ancestors that we burn in engines without ceremony. You can see coal as the broken bones of our dead ancestors that we burn in engines without ceremony. So of course, it shouldn't shock you that if you pull death out of the ground to run your engines, death out of the ground to run your power stations, death out of the ground and burn it, that you would eventually get death from the skies and have death on the seas, because you're powering your society based on death. What I would argue is that if you want to grow the economy, and you've got to, but you want to grow it in a way that respects the earth, won't cook the planet, won't wipe out the ability of our species to survive, then you want to grow your economy based on living things. Right? You want to stop sending people out into the oceans, drilling those holes down there, and risking their lives to do it, and losing their lives to do it. You want to stop sending people up in the mountains of Appalachia, drilling those holes in those mountains, and risking their lives, losing their lives, to keep powering America in the same old way. Your generation has to be smart enough to say, America's future is not down those holes. America's future is not down those holes. If you want to see the future, look up. Look at the sun. We have a Saudi Arabia of solar power that hits our continent from the sun every day. If you want to see the future, look up. Look at the sky. Look at the wind. We have a Saudi Arabia of wind power in our country, not just in the plain states, but off our coast and up near the Great Lakes area. If we resolved as a country that we wanted to power America using the Saudi Arabia of clean energy that we have right now, let me tell you what you do. You instantly begin to put America back to work. Because everything that is good for the economy, everything that is good for the environment, is a job. Solar panels don't put themselves up. Somebody's got to wake up in the morning, put on some work boots and a hard hat, and go and do that work. Wind turbines don't manufacture themselves. Homes don't rebuild themselves to waste less energy. All of that is work. So if we're going to repower and retrofit a nation, that is a massive opportunity to have a private sector-led but government-supported program to begin to put this country back to work. What does that look like? You have people right now who are sitting idle in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, some of the best workers in the world. They make cars, okay? We got a lot of smart people in this room. Anybody know how to make a car? I don't. These are some of the best workers in the world. They're sitting idle right now. They could be building the wind turbines that we need to repower this country. Now, I say wind turbines, I don't mean windmills, I mean wind turbines. What is a wind turbine? 8,000 finely machined parts in each one. You got to think Boeing-level engineering. It's not a wind turbine. This is not Holland, okay? I didn't say windmills. It's not Holland in, like, the 1850s. I'm talking about something else. You hear these politicians always talk about, we need more solar panels and more windmills. No, we don't. We don't need any more windmills. But we do need more wind turbines. 8,000 finely machined parts in each one. As much steel as in 26 cars. Right? You can put your automakers back to work, your steel workers back to work. Just tapping that Saudi Arabia of wind power that we've got. The wind blowing across the plain states and blowing off the coast and blowing up near the Great Lakes area. And the great thing about wind turbines, and if you have wind platforms out there on the ocean, if they collapse, you don't have a massive wind slick that comes along and messes up the whole ecology. You got some broken turbines, you can fix them. So there's a smarter way to do this, okay? So you could put those workers back to work. You have the Sun Belt, which everybody knows you can build solar farms. You can also put solar panels on rooftops across America. That's work. Those are jobs, and they're meaningful jobs. You have homes right now that are wasting energy, which puts too much strain on our grid. Those homes can be retrofitted using existing technology. You don't have to wait for Buck Rogers, right? I'm talking about insulation, caulking guns. You got kids standing out on street corners right now who don't have any hope, any future, nothing to do. We could go to those young people and tell them, put down the handgun and pick up a caulking gun, and let's quit standing out in front of these houses. We can start actually making these houses better by retrofitting them to waste less energy. We have people in red states. Here's the thing that drives me crazy about the folks who are standing in the way of us having this kind of energy policy in America. The people in the red states are suffering the most. If we had sane, smart energy policy, not only could we put our industrial workers back to work and turn our Rust Belt into a green belt, not only could we give urban youth real employment and save people money on their energy bills, have people earning money and saving money at the same time, we also could rescue rural America. I'm trying to get 3 paychecks to rural America. If you own some rural land right now in red state America, you're probably barely holding on to it. If we had sane, smart climate policy, we could get 3 paychecks to you. First of all, if you put wind turbines on that land, you can get paid $10,000 to $20,000 just to watch them turn. Just to watch them turn. You might be able to hold on to your property then. Number 2, you could grow a smart energy crop. Hopefully not corn-based or food-based, but algae and other forms. So that's a second way of getting money to you. And the third is, if we do it the right way, you should be able to use advanced agricultural techniques to capture carbon in the soil, sequester the carbon in the soil, and then be a part of a co-op where you trade that on the markets. Because you're now actually a net carbon reducer, you should be paid for that on the carbon markets, and that's a 3rd paycheck. 3 paychecks for you in rural America, in red state America. You see, there is a way to deal with your problem, your generation's problem. How do you pull people back together? You put them to work. How do you put them to work without baking the planet, without doing more damage and making it harder for your grandkids? Your generation is being asked to make an awful choice. You're either being asked to rev the economy up right now using the old technologies and hurt your grandkids. You can rev the economy up right now the old gray nasty way, but you're going to hurt your grandkids. Or you can protect your grandkids ecologically, but then you're going to suffer economically. I say you've got an option. You can actually do right by your kids economically and right by your grandkids ecologically if we focus on green growth and focus on the policies that will give us green growth. And so I can talk about the policies during the question and answer period, but let me say this to you. What I want you to be crystal clear about and focused on as we go forward, I'm going to be here for a year, and people who are interested in this stuff, I'm happy to talk to you over time. There are people who have an interest in making sure that creative ideas do not get a fair hearing in our country anymore. You have to ask the question. You have problems as tough as the problems that you've got. You would imagine that anybody, anywhere who wants to sit down and try and figure this stuff out, figure out the economics, figure out the policy, figure out the politics, if you're serious about the problems that we face as a country, you got to imagine no one political party's got a monopoly on that. We've got to work together. Listen to what I'm proposing. Progressives always like what I talk about. They think to themselves, hey, here's a black guy. He's talking about green stuff. What's not to like? They're just like, So progressives always like it. But the conservatives should like it too. That's the sad part about it. Notice that nothing I'm talking about at this stage is anything that a conservative shouldn't be able to embrace. Your generation can't deal with this whole liberal conservative divide. I'm telling you, a lot of that stuff is just made up for TV, or it's just to kind of help people keep their existing status quo interests undisturbed. But if you listen to what I just said, I'm not calling for more welfare. There's nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying, I'm not calling for more welfare. I'm calling for more work. I'm not calling for more entitlement programs. I'm calling for more enterprise. I'm not calling to redistribute wealth. I'm saying let's reinvigorate our stuck energy sector and create some new wealth. So progressives should like my questions, conservatives should like my answers. Right? If we're having a fair conversation. If we're having a fair conversation. And so what I want to argue is, or what I want to leave you with is this. If I'm controversial, it's because I do go one step farther. I do go one step farther. I believe that we should have a green economy. And I believe that it can be led by markets, markets being the engine, good government being the caboose, and communities helping out along the way. I believe we can have a green economy, equitable eco-capitalism. Nothing that I have said should alarm anybody who's committed to the fundamentals of what our country is about at all. It should inspire you. I do believe we can have a green economy. But I do go one step farther. I believe we should have a green economy that Dr. King would be proud of. I believe we should have a green economy that includes everybody. I believe we should have a green economy. We should make sure this green wave does lift all boats. I don't believe that the kids in Appalachia should be left out. I don't believe that they should either have to go down in those coal mines or have no job. I believe they should be able to have jobs putting wind turbines on those mountains and not just having to knock them down. I believe we should have a green economy that Dr. King would be proud of. You know, those kids are being asked now to blow up their grandmother's mountains and scrape the coal out. And then when we get done, we're going to abandon them. I don't think that's right. I believe that the kids in Watts, that the kids in Oakland, California should have a piece of this. And I believe that we have a moral obligation as a country to make sure that we include everybody. I believe in equal protection and equal opportunity. I think it applies in the new economy just like the old one. So I do go a step beyond that. And what I ask from you is to go a step beyond that with me. Because the people who are my elders, Belvie Rooks, Naliwe's mom, they had to risk their lives to have an integrated economy. They had to pour their blood out on the ground to have an integrated or racially integrated, equal economy. They were banging their head against the closed door of an existing economy, and people lost their lives. People were shot down in the streets in our country, black and white, so that we could break down the barriers to inclusion in an existing pollution-based economy in the last century. And we lift those people up as heroes now. But they weren't seen as heroes then. They were seen as scary. They were pushing the envelope. But the country is better because they were willing to make that sacrifice, black, white, and brown. Now, if those people were willing to risk their lives, to lose their lives, to integrate a pollution-based economy in the last century, what should we be willing to do to make sure that we have an integrated, inclusive, green economy in the new century? That's my challenge to you, you see. I believe that we can have a green wave that will lift all boats, but it won't happen without that being a moral objective that we put on the table. You say, well, you're talking about affirmative action. I don't know. I don't know how we get there, but I know we won't unless we make that as a commitment. And so I challenge the environmental community that loves to embrace me and say nice things about me. I challenge you on this. How can we have an environmental movement that is morally concerned about the future of an aluminum can, that will not let an aluminum can be thrown away, that can see in an aluminum can a future for that can, that will hold it up and say, this can is precious. The future of this can is more important than its past. It's precious. I won't let it be thrown away. But then live in a country where we have throwaway children. Live in a country where we have children being thrown away into prisons, and neighborhoods that are being thrown away, and now whole states that are being thrown away. That if we're going to have a relevant environmental politics, we have to say we don't have any throwaway dead resources, but we don't have any throwaway living people either. And for that, I'm willing to go through any kind of misunderstanding or persecution because it's a small thing that you will go through. You might feel awkward standing up in an environmental club talking about poverty. Or you might feel awkward as an African-American student standing up in your black club talking about the environment. That's a very, very small inconvenience compared to what the people you hold up as heroes went through. Very, very small. And so, in closing, let me say this. You know, this campus, this year, has a tremendous opportunity because of everything that's going on in the country to hopefully be a place where people can come together and have creative ideas and challenge some of the status quo in both parties some of the conventional thinking in both parties, and get to a place where we trust each other enough that the love, whether we agree with each other ideologically or not, that's what makes America great. It's a democracy. We can disagree here. But here, the love that you feel for this country, the love that you feel for your children or for the children you're going to have, and the love that I feel for the children I'm going to have becomes much more important than the ideologically driven debate and discourse. And when it gets harder to love on this campus, and I imagine that as we get closer to the election, it may get harder to love. There may be some debates and some skirmishes. I understand that. But when it gets harder to love on this campus, I just encourage everybody here to think about the future that we want and love harder. Thank you very much. So I believe we have about 20 minutes for questions. I see a hand, but I can't call on you because somebody's supposed to show up with a mic.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Jones. My name's Antonia. I'm a sophomore here. You referred to the old economy's hyperconsumption and the need to shift for the new economy to a more thrifty lifestyle. And your opinion seems to adhere to those of economists who say that there needs to be a rebalance in consumption, particularly between the United States and China. So my question, I guess, kind of has to deal with how do we simultaneously address, I guess, curbing the ecological damage with reducing consumption? How do we make our new technology more attractive to foreign companies and foreign governments?
Well, let me answer that a couple of different ways. One is that on some people have said that the big problem for people who don't do economics very often, that the big problem, at least until very recently, was that Americans spent too much and saved too little, and our sisters and brothers in China saved too much and spent too little, and that we've got to kind of have a better balance with regard to that. I think that process is already underway. I think the bigger challenge that we've got is that the Chinese government has made a decision. I think it's a laudable decision that they actually want to take the clean energy revolution seriously, and they are investing in technologies. They want to own the market for clean energy, which means that we will go from importing dirty energy from the Middle East to importing clean energy technology from Asia and skip the jobs in the middle. That's a big danger that your generation faces. And until our government takes seriously the fact that we actually want to be energy independent, then we're going to, this particular imbalance, the trade imbalance that we have right now with the Middle East on energy will become a trade imbalance with Asia on clean energy. That's to be avoided. The best way to do that is, in the remaining Congress, is to go for what's called a renewable energy standard. We'll talk about it later. But basically, the United States government needs to go on record telling private capital that we are going to be 20% run on renewable energy, say, by X date, because that will unleash private capital into the United States. I'm not saying the government needs to go and build a bunch of wind turbines, by the way. I'm saying that the government needs to be clear that we've got a goal here, and that just like China's got a goal, and that if you want to play, come to the United States. Right now, you would be very, very concerned if you were a big eco-investor about coming to the United States and, say, creating a wind turbine factory. If you were Vestas in Europe and you said, I can build my next factory in the United States or I can build it in China, right now you would say, I'm going to go to China, because China has the policies in place. They're aggressive. They know that they're going to, I know my product's going to be bought there. I don't know about America. And so this uncertainty that has been ginned up and the paralysis that's been created in D.C. is actually hurting the ability of private capitalists who want to invest in U.S. jobs, who want to put us back to work. If you want to have the jobs of tomorrow, you got to be making the products of tomorrow, which means you've got to have investors who are focused on tomorrow. Those investors are all going to Asia right now, even though we've got as many wind and solar resources here as they have over there. And so what you want to be able to do, whether you're on the left or the right, is to be able to say, let's at least, if the government's not going to solve the problem, at least let the government be on the side of the problem solvers. We have private capitalists that's willing to go, that's on the bench right now because we have not, we spent the past 2 years in D.C. Kicking the can around on this problem while China's been aggressive.
I'm sorry. Have you had a chance to have your ideas vetted by any high-powered accounting powers to determine the true feasibility? And have you made common ground with Boone Pickens at all?
Yes. Boone Pickens and I have gotten a chance to be on a couple of panels together. He's one of my favorite people in American politics. Everything that I say, I try to, again, keep it with my dad's injunction. I try to keep it simple and colloquial. But everything I say is backed up by, I don't know, in some cases OMB and CBO. So I don't know how I'm supposed to call on people. A lot of hands, but the mics are over there. So maybe you. The poor people in the middle are going to get screwed.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mary Riley, and I do corporate training. And one of the things I found is that there's a lot of American corporations and international corporations, but American corporations who are interested in becoming green and have these wonderful green reports, but the people who work for them don't know what the company's doing. And if they know what the company is doing, they don't know much about sustainability itself. And to me, that's a huge opportunity to create a tipping point of people who would vote for sustainable things in Congress and sustainable congressmen and senators so as to get this stuff moved forward. Have you given that any thought? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, what I will say is that there is a huge constituency, and one of the reasons why I think the issue has moved as fast as it has is because this is no longer sort of business versus the environment. This is no longer sort of like business people versus hippies, you know. That's gone. Really what you've got going on at this point, especially if you look at both D.C. and California, those of you who are interested in politics, you've got Texas oil money versus Silicon Valley. That's really what's going on politically. You have Texas oil money versus Silicon Valley. Who's going to own the energy future? And so you actually have Texas oil money that's now come into California's politics and has put a ballot measure to try to knock out all the climate legislation in California to prevent Silicon Valley from being able to make the advances. I mean, this is real serious stuff. So it's not only the kind of stuff you see on TV and all the food fight in D.C., but even at the state level, there's a power struggle going on. Again, which kind of capitalism? Are we going to have green capitalism or gray capitalism? Are we going to have capitalism that actually lets us not only grow markets, but actually, you know, grow health, grow wealth and health? Or are we going to have this kind of gray suicidal stuff? And so what I would say to you is that the constituency has got an economic interest in the future is still unorganized. The constituency that's got an economic interest in the status quo is well organized. And so the future fighting the past right now is a little bit of an imbalance. But I do think as we go forward, here's something most of you guys don't know. There are 80,000 coal miners in America, and they are heroes. They risk their lives every day to keep the lights on to power us. There are 80,000 people right now working in the wind industry. You don't know that. 80,000 people go to work every day right now in the wind industry. There are 46,000 jobs that are supported right now by the solar industry. And so we don't know that because the coal miners, to their, you know, are they're unionized, they're organized, they're vocal, God bless them. But these newer fields and enterprises are just, even though they're now beginning to grow against gravity in the middle of a recession with Congress dithering, they're still growing, but they're not well organized. And so to your point, the people who are part of these firms that are moving in the right direction do need to become more vocal.
This is just alluding to one of the examples that you gave, where you said that we have a plank, and if you had to make your child cross, you'd give them a tricycle or a unicycle, right? And you said that you'll take the tricycle because it's safe. But the thing is, we've reached a point where it's not a choice anymore. If you've stretched the plank so thin that you don't have that choice of being safe at this point, you need to take radical stands to be able to cross over to the future. You can't sit around saying that now we're going to take safe stands, we're going to do everything right. It's come to the point where you need to take certain radical steps. And that's the only way that we're going to go across. Always taking the safer side of things will not help us move forward.
Well, I may have misspoken or been misheard. What I mean to say is I'm all for dramatic action, but what I'm not for is saying, well, we're going to do it all based on the government. The government's just going to mandate everything, and we're just going to regulate our way out of the problem. I don't think that's going to work. I worked in the government for 6 months. I can tell you I don't think it's going to work. I'm also not for saying, well, we'll just leave it to the entrepreneurs, and they'll come up with some cool new technology on their own, and I don't think that's going to work. I also don't believe you just leave it to families and consumers, and I think you've got it. These are complex problems, and what I'm saying is that the smell test for your generation should be, if somebody's got a single bullet answer, they're probably selling you something. Your generation has to be the hybrid generation. Not just in terms of your cars, but in terms of the way that you think. You've got to be willing, if you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever you are, you've got to be willing to consider that your side does not have a monopoly on the truth, and that the stakes are too high for you to get it wrong out of arrogance. Now, we can get it wrong out of, the thing, but not out of arrogance. And so that's what I was trying to say.
Hello, Mr. Jones. My name is Archie Askew of Trans Central High School, member of the Science Mentor Program at Princeton University Preparatory Program. My question is, what do you think our school and education system need to do to prepare youth like myself for a greener economy and a greener environment?
What do schools need to do?
Yes.
Gotcha. That's a short question with a very long answer, but what I will say about it is that ecological literacy is going to be just as important as any other kind of literacy. I would encourage you to challenge some of the basics that you may get now when it comes to science and economics. For instance, we tend to have this view in economics that you can essentially pave the planet. There's no logical. I'm trying to keep it in a. I'll put it this way. You want to be in a school if you can't, fight for it. But you want to be in a school where science and math are taken much more seriously than they are most of the time. Your generation is going to have to solve a lot of very practical problems, like how you're going to make food, how you're going to make energy, how you're going to power yourselves. For instance, right now we have this idea that you can feed cities based on food that's actually grown outside of cities. And that's just kind of like, yeah, of course. Well, how else would you feed a city? Well, the problem you're going to have is when you have the level of weather disruption that we're talking about and the level of price disruption on energy that you're talking about, you can't be confident that food grown outside of your city will be grown in enough quantities, or you'll be able to truck it 2,000 miles across the continent to you. So you're going to be in a situation where you're going to want to have vertical greenhouses inside cities. In other words, food production inside cities is going to become a big deal. Some of you think that's nuts. How are you going to have food production inside the cities? Others of you go, they grow all kinds of plants in cities. My cousin actually grows some plants in his closet. Hey, maybe these entrepreneurs that know how to grow those kind of plants inside of cities, those kind of herbs inside of cities, right, could be growing other things inside of cities if we had the right kind of policies. Well, now guess what? That would require you to have been taught to think in your school about economics somewhat differently, about the science of agriculture somewhat differently, because actually you don't have to clear-cut whole forests and dump a bunch of poison on the ground to grow food. You can actually do it lots of different ways. It would require that you be taught to think about water and all these issues differently. Why? Because your survival is going to depend on it. Trust me. So I hope that your quest for jobs and entrepreneurship will have you become an ally in changing some of the curricula. Because I think the curriculum could be a lot more fun, a lot more dynamic. You could be creating all kinds of projects and programs. You could be doing community gardening. You could be doing rooftop solar. You could be doing all kind of hands-on science stuff. You could be creating little micro enterprises and really getting ready for the future. Or you could just be corralled into classrooms getting ready for your bubble test. And I don't think that you should settle for that kind of miseducation.
Hi, my name is Daniel Growald, and I'm a senior majoring in ecology and evolutionary biology. And the question that's always on my mind is how do we get there? I think the green economy is fully on target. But how are we going to get there? Do you think that it's going to happen through the political system? And if so, what do we need to do as citizens to get the political system to get us to a green economy? And if not, then how do you think we get there?
Well, let me complain about something, because I think it's a great question. And this is for those of you who are hardcore about this stuff and want to have an answer that's not just a throwaway answer. I just don't know. I thought we had figured this one out, folks, and I was wrong. Let me tell you what I thought we were going to do, and then let me tell you what I think we're going to have to try to figure out how to do. I thought that we were going to put a price on carbon, right? And you think to yourself, well, why is that something to be jumping up and down about? Well, I agree with you, it's not, but it was something that we thought we had cut a deal on. We thought it was something that both parties could come together on. If carbon, let me just complain about something. If carbon is the most dangerous form of pollution in the history of the world, which it is, we keep doing what we're doing, we bake the planet. You got a third of Pakistan underwater today, you'll have a third of America underwater tomorrow. It's just as simple as that, okay? Now, this makes it really bad stuff, this carbon. Really awful stuff, this carbon. And you think, well, what should we do about it? Well, the first thing that you would think, because you're a rational person, you think, well, then why don't we just regulate it? Why don't we just say, don't put it up there more, right? Something very complicated. Stop that, right? Stop thee, make it more sophisticated. Thee shall stop, something, right? But when we proposed this, 15 years ago, we said, well, why don't we just tell them to stop? And said, well, this is horrible, we were told. You're a horrible, horrible regulator. We're sorry. You big business, big government person. Oh, we're sorry, we're not big government. We don't want big government. We're going to use market mechanisms. That's what we were told. We're going to use market mechanisms to fix this. So we were convinced to take something that's, in your mind, a regulatory problem and treat it like a market problem. A regulatory failure, treat it like a market failure. To break this down, if someone had a business and a key part of their business was pouring arsenic in the well out of which you drink, glug, 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 your natural response would not be to say, arsenic must be too cheap. How can we get the price of arsenic up enough the person will stop doing that, right? Let's put a price on arsenic. Let's figure, like that, you would think the person's, okay, you're nuts, right? You would just say, well, why don't we call the cops, right? Why don't we just stop them from doing that? No. So we said, fine, we're good liberals, progressive. We said, fine, we don't want anybody to say that we're relying on big government and we're regulating, fine. We'll pretend this regulatory failure, this letting carbon be dumped into the atmosphere, is actually a market failure. We just didn't price the carbon correct. Fine, we said. Okay? And so then we come up with this great thing called cap and trade. Why? Because we don't want to seem like we're big regulatory mean people. We want to be market sensitive. So we're going to say, fine, we will put a limit on carbon, and then we'll sell credits, and we'll let the market figure this stuff out, right? The government will set the limit, the amount of carbon, we'll let the market figure out the price of carbon, and that will give us the quantity of carbon. I'll say it again. Ultimately, that will give us the quantity of carbon. And we did this because we wanted the business community to be supportive. We did this because we wanted the other party to be supportive. This was actually something that was proposed, it came initially out of Republican think tanks, and we said, fine. So here we go, thinking that we're arm in arm with the business community, arm in arm with the other party, and don't forget, now you think to yourself, you fool, right? No, right? You fool, man. How could you have been tricked? So obvious that this was not going to work out. But let's not forget 2008. Remember the big debate where Senator Barack Obama and Senator John McCain fought about cap and trade and global warming? No, because it didn't happen. It's the only thing they agreed on. The whole campaign, there was never a debate. They never fought about it because both candidates said, global warming's real, cap and trade is the answer. Check. So we all, and then we run into a wall of opposition and machine gun fire saying that we're trying to take over, we have some takeover agenda, that we're trying to, it's cap and tax, and got every single piece of mistreatment we would have gotten if we had just said regulate it. Well, now here's what I say. And again, I can say what I want to because I don't work there anymore. Here's what I say. We could treat this like a market failure. And there is a solution called cap and trade. And we could use price mechanisms. And it could work. I promise you it could work. It's working right now with RGGI. Abby, where's the RGGI states? That's like Massachusetts and the Northeast states. So we know that it can work. And we can do it that way. And the principle would be very simple. Very simple. Nobody gets to pollute for free. Right? That's all cap and trade is. Nobody gets to pollute for free. You can't pollute for free. If you walk out here right now and throw a gum wrapper on the ground, right, and a cop sees you, you'll get a fine. Why? You can't pollute for free. Small business can't pollute for free. If somebody's got a small business and they dump their trash out in the street, they'll get a fine. They're going to be forced to take the trash away and pay for it. So we could do it just that way, and that's how we wanted to do it. But if we can't get there using a cap and trade mechanism, which is a bipartisan proposal and a concession to the business community, the Supreme Court of the United States, I didn't say the Supreme Court of Berkeley. I didn't say the Supreme Court of Berkeley. The Supreme Court of the United States, no liberal nut jobs they, have said that the EPA, under the Clean Air Act, has the right to regulate the stuff because carbon's that dangerous. And so if we can't, to your point, if we can't get Congress to go with a bipartisan solution that gives huge concessions to the business community and still does deal with the problem, then I think we have no choice but to let the EPA regulate this stuff, like they would regulate the arsenic or anything else and just say, you have X amount of time to put less of that stuff in the air so you don't kill us all. Now, if in fact folks don't like that answer, if you don't like that answer, if you don't want the EPA to be the Environmental Protection Agency, if you don't want Lisa Jackson to do her job, then we need to get the other party to cooperate and go forward with the deal that we already have.
So that was unfortunately the last question. Thank you. I want to make sure that everyone knows, or the students know, that Van will be teaching a course in the spring, tentatively titled Liberation Ecology, and then a bunch of other cool stuff after the colon. It will be up in the catalog soon. He's also going to be doing a series of brown bags while he's here. So if you look on the CAS website, you'll see the days when he's going to be offering the brown bags, and you can sign up right on the website. They're going to be fairly informal. I also wanted you to know that we will have on October 19th, Bob Moses and Amani Perry and one other person will be here for the We the People tour, which is about quality education as an educational right, as a constitutional right. So there'll be a panel on that topic, another civil rights issue of our generation. And I'm supposed to encourage you all to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And to please come out for our next lecture on October 12th at 4:30 in Friend. That will be called Making the Impossible Possible. It'll be a lecture by Bill Strickland. Thank y'all all for coming.